Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Anthony Ryan, CEO of Youngcare. Anthony is highly regarded in the not-for-profit and business sector of Australia. He has received recognition for his innovative approaches to uniting the business sector with worthy community causes and received the honour and title of Queensland Great in the Centenary Queensland Awards. He's been instrumental as a leader in creating innovative programs to support some of Australia's most impoverished and was the creator of the acclaimed corporate immersion program Gone Fishing, which has provided life-changing experiences for many Australian business leaders. He's now turned his attention to the disability sector and has been the CEO for Youngcare for just over a year. He is leading change in the sector, particularly in engaging with developers and investors in building platinum accommodation for young people with high care needs. Anthony believes strongly in advocating for the thousands of young people across Australia with high care needs who are trying to navigate through the NDIS and live with dignity and choice. And thanks for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Excellent. So, what is Youngcare?
Youngcare was born out of a gap that was existing in the social infrastructure of Australia. It actually came out of a real need. One of my friends, Dave Connery, his wife, basically got late onset of MS, and during that time, Dave, as he would say, had the honour of caring for her and really looking for options for her to be supported as she basically had that journey of trying to deal with that disease. And during that time, he found that as it became more and more difficult to look after her, he started looking for alternative accommodation, alternative care models. And all he could find at the time were nursing homes and aged care facilities. And ultimately, that drove him to really start engaging government and media to say, look, is this really all that's out there for young people who have been given a really hard journey in life to deal with? And really, at the time, that was it. So Youngcare came out of that. Youngcare came out of a very compelling story, a compelling personal story of a husband and wife trying to look for a care model and a residential space that would celebrate their youth, and there wasn't anything around at the time.
And so how do you come into this? You mentioned this is your mate, but what's the background on the organization? How do you end up leading it?
Okay, so Dave was a very charismatic leader, and as I mentioned just before, it's a very compelling story. So three of his friends, which were also good mates of mine, Nick Bonifant, Simon Lockyer, and Matty Lawson, all left their own roles, and they were already pretty much succeeding very much in their own roles in life that they'd chosen, but decided to put them on hold for a while to start investigating this issue in Australia. I was always watching from the sidelines. I was looking at four of my mates doing something which I thought was outstanding, and it became a very iconic story, not just in our own network of friends, but it started becoming a very iconic story of mateship within Queensland, that these four guys that were on a very positive trajectory in their own business lives decided to put things on hold to address an issue that really needed to be have a focus upon. And so when I was asked whether or not I'd consider becoming the CEO of Youngcare, it just felt like this incredibly natural progression, but it was also an incredible honour because I saw four of our immediate network who had done something so well and brought attention to the issue and led the issue nationally, I felt as if I could carry on their good work.
The not-for-profit space is going through change currently. There's been a lot of confusion over the implementation in Australia of the NDIS. Could you just provide an overview of exactly what the NDIS is and how that's supposed to affect services nationally?
The NDIS is a really complex situation. I'll do my best to, as quickly as possible, to summarise it. The National Disability Insurance Scheme has come out of a need to change the sector to ensure that individuals that have a disability actually become customers rather than just a number. So where the NDIS was established, the need for the NDIS came out of the fact that in many cases, like how I just mentioned with Dave and Siobhan, when they were given that path to try and navigate their own care and residential options, they weren't able to find that path, and there was a deficiency in our system. And when you do go into nursing homes or aged care, or you're waiting in a hospital bed because there's just no infrastructure to support you, that's where people weren't receiving individualised care. The government realised that, and I think it was definitely organisations such as Youngcare that put the focus on it. We had 60-minute stories. We had Powderfinger, who were all mates of ours through school, really putting this, talking about this issue in their concerts, writing songs about it, and really putting the government in a situation where they could not but listen to our story. That, I think, acted as some of the catalysts that pushed the NDIS. So the NDIS really is addressing that and bringing the individual back as a customer and saying, well, this is what I need. This is how you need to address this issue. This is where I want to live, and this is how I want to live. So yeah, NDIS is about addressing choice and independence for individuals caught up in the disability space.
And when you speak with other not-for-profits, what's the overall impression of the scheme and its implementation?
I believe there is quite a lot of confusion out there about the NDIS, and I think a lot of organisations in the past are going to be impacted upon this in quite significant ways, because the way they set up their structure was a reliance on grants, a reliance on government funding, a reliance on acting as an NFP rather than acting as a corporate-minded organisation that was looking after its own sustainability. And that's where, so I've heard quite a lot of negativity, but from Youngcare, we believe the NDIS is definitely the way to go. We believe that the disability space has always been too institutional, and we think that the NDIS is really about driving independence and choice into the space and allowing people to live the way that they should be able to live. I think if you look at Youngcare, we represent young people, and young people should have young lives, and they deserve young lives. So you are hearing a lot of negativity about the NDIS from certain sectors, but I believe it's those that haven't prepared for this, that have been overly reliant on an institutional approach to the sector. And it's those that are nimble, that have been able to respond always as part of their DNA as a corporate thinker, as building networks, understanding who their stakeholders are. They're the ones that are going to really run with the NDIS, see it as the most important catalyst to changing the social infrastructure in Australia. So we're overly optimistic.
And so within the framework of the NDIS, then how does Youngcare present itself to the people who need your services, and how has that changed with its implementation?
Sure, and that's a good question. So Youngcare has never been a care provider. We've never, we would never say, we're care experts. What we the position that we always wanted to do is, so where are the gaps in this? And the first gap was we believed that there needed to be facilities created right across Australia that were built to understand disability, but also built that were age appropriate. And so we went about with Cox as our architects, really designing spaces that we thought were first class, that were fully automated, that celebrated youth, celebrated independence and choice, and were places which were inviting. So there are a couple of things that horrified us as a Youngcare group right from the outset. So if you were a young person living in an aged care facility, statistics would say that you would get visited less than 3 times a year. So not only were you dealing with a disability, a physical disability, you're also dealing with loneliness, rejection, lack of connection to the outside world, and I couldn't think of anything worse. And within Australia, that just totally blew us away. That these individuals that were living in our streets, that were living in our suburbs, they were sort of hidden. Their stories weren't being told, and they were living in absolute nightmares. And so that's where we started putting our space, first of all, our energies in to designing spaces, designing homes that people wanted to live in, that we felt honoured their needs. That was our first thing that we did. And then what came out of that is people, families, other organisations, other NFPs asked whether or not they could have access to that information. And we felt our responsibility was definitely to share it. And we wanted to see a multiplier impact right across Australia of residential spaces being built, getting these people out of inappropriate care and inappropriate homes and getting them into something that really addressed their genuine needs. And that's what we did well. And then we started becoming experts in other areas. You know, we started what was called Youngcare Connect, and we received thousands and thousands of calls per year now of people who are absolutely lost and trying to navigate themselves through the disability space. And we have people that man the phones and just absolutely assist them in how they navigate through, you know, what's the best care options for them, what's the best residential options for them, how are there people that we can connect them with. And that's something that we've done very, very well.
So the name is Youngcare, but you're not just for the young, are you? You service different age groups.
That's correct. You'd be happy to know, Jesse, or I'm certainly happy to know that we regard 65 as young. And I'm about to approach my 50th birthday, so that's something that I've still got another 15 or 16 years of youth in me. We believe the reason why we've targeted the 18 to 65-year-old set is that particularly now, the way society is going, that 65 is still young, and 65, up to that age, that is a place where we still think an aged care facility, a hospital bed, a nursing home isn't the place for a 65-year-old. We're not having a crack at aged care, by the way. We're not having a crack at nursing homes. We believe the improvements and the platinum standards that are now being driven into that space are awesome. But I don't think a 45-year-old person, if they have a choice, would choose to live in a nursing home. They'd want to live in a facility that gives them access to the outside world, gives them access to pubs and shops and cafes, movies, concerts, going to see sporting venues and things such as that. They're all the things that we believe are really vital in allowing someone to feel honoured and to feel energised by where they live.
You had mentioned earlier you grew up, your mates were in Powderfinger, but Youngcare has received some noticeable media attention, including from them. Can you talk about the media that you've achieved, but also what's been required to get this cut through when there's so many not-for-profits out there?
Sure. Look, I think what an NFP must do right from the outset, and I think I've said this already a couple of times, is I think you need to act like a corporate. And what corporates do well is they communicate their story. And so if Youngcare's done anything very well, we've been able to tell the story and tell um, and articulate what the real need is in our community. And people in Australia get surprised by that. They actually get angered in many ways that there are people on their watch being impacted in such a negative way. And what we have then done is not just told the people at our events, we've actually in our own networks been able to successfully go to developers, investors, media agencies, and tell that story and say you've all got a part to play. Now, all of a sudden, once you start building that network, it actually then starts feeding into a network that's excited and energised by help solving the role. Like Youngcare, we've got on our whiteboards, and every whiteboard in this building, make ourselves redundant. That's what drives us. We don't want to be feeding ourselves into a role. Everyone in my workforce knows that if we're going to be successful at what we do, in 10 years' time, there will be no Youngcare, because the infrastructure of Australia will do that. Now, when you actually say that to a corporate, when you say that to a Channel 9 who have been unbelievable supporters, when you go to Suncorp, who are one of our greatest corporate sponsors, and say, we don't want to be around for perpetuity. We want you to assist us in fulfilling this need. People get, it almost becomes infectious, the energy that it's around that. And so, yes, we have got movie stars that are supporting us. We have got rock stars that are supporting us. And I think it's because we communicate well with them. We let them feel impassioned by the idea, but we also say to them, our success will mean that the death of our organisation. So I think we started with an end point in mind, rather than where I think you turn around, a lot of other NFPs turn around and say, how do we actually grow? We don't want to grow. We just want to be loud. We want to disturb. We want to solve the issue and then move on.
Now, with all this attention, what's that done for the organization in terms of, building this platform? It's, you're getting all this media attention. You're talking about how ideally you don't actually want to exist as an organization. So where do you sort of find the balance of what you're trying to achieve in there?
Look, I walked out of Channel 9 2 weeks ago. I went down to Willoughby to meet with their executives. And as I got into the car and drove away, I was almost numb by what they had just offered us. So we went down to Channel 9 with 12 ideas of trying to build our relationship with them. The 9 Cares, the 9 Foundation. We targeted Channel 9 as going to be the group, the media powerhouse that was going to amplify our voice, because we've been very good in Queensland. We have a presence in other states, but we really want to develop a national presence. And so we have targeted Channel 9, and I think Channel 9's targeted us as well. It's been mutual to be able to bring a media attention. So we went down with 12 hit lists that some of them we thought were outlandish. And at the end of the meeting, not only had Channel 9 agreed to support us in 12, they actually added 3 others. So on the Today Show this year, you're going to hear Youngcare actually telling stories of individuals right across Australia. So the Today Show is committed to being a voice for disability right across Australia, and they want to tell the stories that are living in people's streets. They want to tell the stories of suburbs. They want to, in some ways, create a little bit of outrage across Australia. So we've targeted media agencies on purpose because we believe they have an incredible responsibility to tell the truth about what's going on in the disability space in Australia, but also use their presence, their professionalism, their storytelling ability to be able to build partnerships with government. Like we're not angry at the government. We actually want to work with the government. They need some help in this space, and they've already made the quantum leap of developing the NDIS, and it's got bipartisan support. We're just wanting to be that group that says, okay, well, let's all draw this together. They put out, I think the beauty of the NDIS is it's challenging the private sector now to actually get on board, and they put out some really good incentives to the private sector to assist with the building, with the investment that's required, and we want to utilise our strength is building networks, getting networks and stakeholders that are absolutely vital to the success of this, talking to each other, believing in each other, creating a sense of optimism and creating a sense of belief that this is something that we can actually solve. And I think, Jesse, one of the things that drives me every day as I get out of bed is that we can be a part of solving a social issue that has always been part of an Australian fabric, and it's almost been forgotten. We've got this window of time that we can solve this together, and to be part of that is something absolutely special.
So just to wrap up from here, what are the plans going forward then? You've got the media attention, you've got the support of other people, you're trying to eliminate yourself as a business. What are you going to do over the next couple of years?
The Channel 9, as an example, or our media attention as an example, we believe needs to drive that sense of optimism into the space that we can really solve disability, residential issues and care issues for the first time in our history. So what we will be doing over the next 3 years, and it's quite timely that you just asked this. We just got out of a strategy meeting with our key stakeholders yesterday. Is what we will be doing is utilising our space, our network, our voice to sit down with government. So it's what we realise that we're very much we're in a privileged position where we've been asked our opinion from federal ministers right through to state ministers, etc. But where we think our biggest space is assisting the developers and investors believe in the SDA component of the NDIS. We haven't talked too much about that, but individuals, around about 6 to 8% of young people with high care needs will have what's called an SDA package assigned to their care needs. Now that SDA package, the Special Disability Accommodation Package, really is the incentive for them to attract a developer and an investor to build for them, to build a space for them to celebrate their needs and get themselves out of aged care, get themselves out of a hospital bed or a nursing home, or whatever we would regard as inappropriate. Now, the developers and investors can't do that without a Youngcare. They don't understand disability. They actually don't know many people in the disability space. So we're going to be the group, or the main catalyst between uniting government, developers, investors with people within the disability space, and then care providers, and creating this sort of microcosm of success and platinum build and platinum care, which actually will lift the standard within the health system of Australia and create, and by saying that, I really need to reiterate that we're bringing in stakeholders that we will know will do it at a platinum level, and therefore if there's a shark or an opportunist out there trying to come in and invest in this space and do it in a really haphazard, poor manner, they won't be able to compete. Youngcare's main role in this is to build a platinum group of enablers, of providers, of doers to be able to solve this issue, to not just to ticket, but to solve it and provide those outcomes that we'd all be proud to stand alongside. That's our role.
Anthony, that's really all the questions I have for you today. Is there anything that you want to say before we finish up?
No, I believe that your questions have been outstanding, and they've really allowed me to voice what we need to do. All I can say to the public and anyone that's listening to this podcast is that the NDIS is the social change that the disability sector has always been looking for. There are always going to be a number of roadmap blocks in any new sector change, something as monumental as this. We're about creating an optimistic outlook on that, understanding that there's going to be difficulties and challenges, but who cares? Just keep our head down, unite with the right people to ensure that this can be that successful injection into our social fabric that we've always needed. And to tell you the truth, the disability sector, those people that are in the nightmare of living within this space, and it is in many cases one of the hardest roads you could imagine, they're counting on us to do this. They're counting on us not to bloody throw stones and fight. They're counting on us to actually solve this and work together to bring about that rainbow story that they require.
Anthony, thanks for your time today. It's been insightful.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Thanks for your time.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos, by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.